Hi, everyone. You're listening to Radio Cherry Bomb, and I'm your host, Kerry Diamond. I'm the founder and editor of Cherry Bomb magazine. I have been on the road a lot over the past few weeks. Vegas, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, Atlanta. It's been a lot of fun. I have eaten a lot of great food and met a lot of amazing people. While I was in Los Angeles, I sat down with today's guests, Sarah Hymanson and Sara Kramer, the chef owners behind Kismet Restaurant and Kismet Rotisserie. Cherry Bomb has been following Sarah and Sarah's careers for the past decade, and we are big fans of their approach to food, seasonality, and hospitality. Stay tuned to learn what Sarah and Sara have been up to and for all the details on their brand new cookbook, Kismet, Bright, Fresh, Vegetable-Loving Recipes. I have been waiting for this book for a long time. There's so many recipes in there I can't wait to make. I'm excited for you to get to know Sarah and Sara, so stay tuned for our conversation. This episode of Radio Cherry Bomb is supported by Open Table. As you may know, we've been on the road this summer with Open Table for our Sit With Us community dinner series, which highlighted amazing female chefs and restaurateurs in the Cherry Bomb and Open Table networks. Thank you to everyone who joined us and to the amazing chefs and teams at the featured restaurants. We kicked things off in early June in New Orleans with Chef Melissa Arujo at Alma. And then we headed to Atlanta for an evening with Laban Nosh with Chef Ro Vakili. Last week, we were in Dallas at Jose with Chef Anastasia Quinones Pittman, and we had a sweet ending to our series last night at Nostrana in Portland, Oregon with Chef Kathy Wims. It was such a treat meeting so many of you. Beautiful food, beautiful people. It's been so much fun. Thank you to Open Table for bringing these experiences to life with us. By the way, if you are interested in curated dining events like the Sit With Us dinners, check out the Open Table experiences on their app and website. Head to opentable.com/experiences to explore what's happening near you, or use it to find fun events to enjoy on your travels, like Open Table's Summer Sets, a dinner series that combines music and food to create one-of-a-kind evenings in cities like Portland, Oregon, Miami, and New Orleans. Today's episode is also supported by Pernod Ricard, creators of conviviality. Pernod Ricard is a worldwide leader in the spirits and wine industry and embraces the spirit of conviviality, as we all should, and is focused firmly on a sustainable and responsible future. Their prestigious portfolio of brands includes classic names beloved by bartenders and mixologists around the world. There's the Glenlivet Single Malt Scotch, Martell Cognac, and Código 1530 Tequila, just to name a few. If you are a regular listener, you know my preferred drink is always bubbles, so I love a glass of Perrier-Jouët champagne to kick off a special night out. And I also love a champagne cocktail. My favorite is a French 75, which you can make with Perrier-Jouët Grand Cru and some Malfy gin. That sounds lovely, doesn't it? To learn more about Pernod Ricard, head to pernod-ricard.com. And don't forget, always drink responsibly. Now, let's hear from today's guests. Sarah and Sara, welcome to Radio Cherry Bomb.
So excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so thrilled. We're here in LA talking to you, which is great. Donnie and from Cherry Bomb and I had dinner at Kismet last night. I always do try to go into Kismet. I'm only here a few times a year, but Kismet is always one of my first stops. And when I'm here, I crave vegetables, and you absolutely deliver.
Love to hear that. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being a fan.
Sara Kramer, we've known you since 2013. We both kind of launched at the same time. Cherry Bomb was born that year, and you kind of hit it big on the New York food scene. You were the chef at a place called Glasserie, and were getting a lot of attention for what you were doing.
Right. Yeah. That was a very interesting moment. But it's nice to, I think, be at this stage now and look back and understand it all better.
I want to talk about something really fun, and I think everybody always asks you about this, Sara. But you were in Mamma Mia on Broadway. We need to talk about this for all our Broadway fans out there. Not just our Broadway fans, our Mamma Mia fans.
Oh, right.
Who did you play, and what was your big number or moment on stage?
Well, so I started on tour. I got the show when I was 17, and I did it for 2.5 years. I was on tour first for a year and a half, and then on Broadway for a year, and I played Sophie, the Amanda Seyfried character. I got really lucky. I went to an open call. I had 6 callbacks over the course of a year. Yeah, it just happened. It was very whirlwindy.
Did you go to performing arts? Were you a Broadway kid?
I did a lot of extracurriculars. I was very dedicated to it, between a program in New York called Applause, which maybe some people out there have heard of. I went to Stage Door Manor, the theater camp. I had done it at school. I took every opportunity to be in every show, both like I grew up in Nyack, which is just outside the city in New York. So every opportunity to perform at like the R.I.P. Helen Hayes Theater that was there and lots of other things. Just was in 3 shows at once throughout my whole young life.
You were a real theater kid.
Oh, big time.
What's it like being on Broadway? It's
It
also
was-
for my mother, who's the biggest Broadway fan.
Oh. I mean, it was incredible. It was hard to put it in context being so young and having like kind of exclusively dedicated myself to theater and performance at that time. And then it just seemed kind of like the next step. And I knew it was on obviously a much bigger stage. I think that tour was much more of like an eye-opener than even Broadway was, because you're in a different city every week and the conditions change all the time. The audiences are really different. You're seeing the whole country. It made me grow up in certain ways really, really, really quickly because I had just graduated high school when I got the tour. So it was incredible and also really challenging. I was the youngest in the cast by far in both companies. And I think I was very much trying to be an adult, but certainly not one. Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't ever change it, and I don't regret making that decision, but definitely put me in a pretty different category from all of my peers.
We will talk about Kismet in just a sec, but it's so interesting that you're on Broadway because there are so many parallels between Broadway and restaurants.
There really are. And Sarah and I have talked about it a lot, but the idea of like it's game time, it's showtime, very, very similar in restaurants. And the idea that sort of cooking in a kitchen is very performance based. My skill set and my history lent itself pretty naturally to feeling very comfortable and feeling like I could excel in a kitchen space and the intensity of it and everything. There is, so much.
Sarah H., any theater background?
Yeah, did a bunch of theater as a kid, but I was an acrobat later on in my
You just made a hand gesture. I
adolescence.
thought you were going to say, I was an actor.
No,
An acrobat.
I did theater, and I always had, a few lines, maybe one little solo in a song, but I was never the lead in any plays. Then I was an acrobat from when
like
I was
Cirque du Soleil?
I wasn't in Cirque du Soleil, but yes, a la Cirque du Soleil. So I did flying trapeze and silks, which is like the fabric that hangs from the ceiling. There was no acro yoga at the time, so I was really enmeshed in a world of people that were born and raised in the circus. So that was a very big part of my world as a teenager.
Let's talk food stuff. Sara Kramer, you burst onto the culinary scene, like I said, around the same time as Cherry Bomb, back in 2013. You were the chef of a very buzzy restaurant in Brooklyn and getting a lot of attention. You suddenly announced you were leaving and eventually wound up in LA. I remember the exact moment I read that you were leaving and everyone was shocked. For people who have some big life decisions ahead of them, can you go back and talk about your thought process?
I think I'm a little impulsive, and I think I would be less so now. I think I didn't have as much like zoom out quality to my thought process as I would now after a long time of thinking. I didn't know, I had been working kind of head down in kitchens from the time I was 21. I don't think I really knew that much about food media. I don't think I knew that much about the awards processes. I don't think I knew that much about attention generally. I think I was just kind of like, oh, this isn't making me happy. I'm working really hard and I don't feel appreciated in the way I want to be appreciated, and I want to make a different decision. And so I did. And I think it also speaks to the way I feel about partnership. That is a through line, actually, I think, between then and now in terms of what I really expect from a partner. I'm lucky that I think Sarah and I have really built something strong that has a lot of communication and a lot of mutual appreciation. That has been a really amazing experience and silver lining to the entire journey. But yeah, I think that advice to other people facing similarly large decisions, I would say talk to a lot of people before you make them. People in your world who might have a little bit more perspective than you do. But, I think generally go with your gut.
It's interesting you say that because in retrospect, it seems like you did make the right decision because also at the time, almost your entire staff quit with you, including Sarah Hymanson. You were there as this was going down.
I was there. I guess for me, there was no reason why I would have stayed if Sarah wasn't there. I had no attachment to that place or the ownership or anything related to it. Once Sara and I started talking about leaving and doing something on our own, there was nothing that would have kept me there, especially. I'm not a very impulsive person generally, and I didn't have anything planned, and I was in a very open place in my life at the time, and I wasn't in a romantic partnership and was interested in doing my own thing, interested in creative partnership and general collaboration, and really found a kinship in our relationship and what we had started to build. And the idea of continuing to do that and doing something new and exciting really worked for me.
We'll be right back with today's guests. The steamy summer is upon us, and I know it is hot, hot, hot where almost all of you are. I always have a hard time trying to figure out what to wear when the temperature rises, and that's one reason I love Alex Mill, the brand known for classic tailored pieces. They have lots of great items to keep you looking fresh and feeling cool this summer. Head to alexmill.com and check out their linen shop for breezy dresses, cute crossback tank tops, and very of the moment linen vests with matching shorts. We shot the Madeline linen vest in twill for our recent cover portfolio, and I loved it so much, I went out and bought one for myself with a matching jacket, and I have already worn it over a dozen times. While you're on Alex Mill's website, be sure to check out another one of my favorites, their tote bags. I have the Alex Mill Perfect Weekend Bag in natural, and I lug it everywhere, from the subway to the beach. There's more to discover from their women's and men's collections, including the new Alex Mill jeans line, and lots of items under $200. All well-made, timeless pieces you'll love for a long time to come. If you're in New York City, you can stop by their shops in Soho or the Upper East Side and explore the world of Alex Mill for yourself. Tell them Cherry Bomb sent you. A little housekeeping. We have 3 fun events coming up. There's the Women Who Grill demo and dinner on Friday, July 12th with Elizabeth Poet of Ranch to Table on the Magnolia Network. That will take place at Elizabeth's Rancho San Julian in Santa Barbara County. Then, on Friday, July 26th, we'll be with Chef Camille Becerra, author of the new book, Bright Cooking, for a special dinner at the Soundview Hotel in Greenport on the North Fork of Long Island. Then on Friday, August 2nd, we are headed to Portland, Maine, for dinner at Crown Jewel Restaurant with Chef Alex Wright. I'll be at all 3 of these events and can't wait to see everybody. Tickets are on sale at cherrybomb.com. Thank you to our event sponsors, Kerrygold, Le Creuset, and Pernod Ricard. When did LA come up as a possible destination for the 2 of you?
Kind of early 2014, I had gone to LA with my boyfriend at the time because he's from here. We had visited and I was like, oh, LA is different from what I expected it to be. It seems very cool. Felt like there was a lot of opportunity here and felt like you could do something kind of small. I don't know if LA is actually the way that I perceived it then, but it definitely felt at the time like an exciting opportunity to be like, oh, here's this place that's beautiful with access to incredible product and produce that's really aligned with the style of food that I cook and the kind of food that I'd like to cook. It feels possible. You know, it's like at the time, Silver Lake was still kind of undeveloped and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to just have like a little project here and start something fresh. I also think that I'm from New York and had never left New York in a permanent way, like in a real decision to move elsewhere kind of way that a lot of people get when they go to college. I was just like, if I don't leave now because of the nature of our work, it ties you to a place. If I don't leave New York at that moment, then I think I'll probably be there forever. And I just wanted something else.
Sara, how about you? What was your connection to LA, if any?
I had really never considered it until we started talking about it. Definitely had an idea of what LA was, that it was very superficial and all highways and not that diverse. And I just really didn't know anything about it. And I'm very pale, so I should not be in this weather, in this climate.
You and I share that.
Yeah. It's just a lot of work.
It's a lot of sunscreen.
A lot of sunscreen. But we visited and I was just very surprised by how multicultural and how dense it is in a lot of areas. Of course, I mean, as a produce-loving person, you can't really beat it. And the weather is amazing. And yeah, similarly to what Sara was saying, it felt like there was still room for newness in a way that maybe I guess naively thought that more so than New York.
Well, I think you were right in lots of respects because now you two are so fully associated with the LA food scene. How was the acclimation process?
It was hard for me, especially. I mean, you came here with a partner. I left a really full community of people that I loved in New York, and there was no part of me that really wanted to leave New York. It was just a choice that I made to come here. So I didn't have any kind of relief related to making a change.
So you were coming out here cold, no friends, no nothing?
I had a few people that also moved at a similar time. One person in the food world, and then a few people who I knew from my college experience who were not at all in the food world. And that was nice. So I knew a few people, but
still,
not
it's
the
tough.
community that I had in New York.
And you're a Chicago girl, right?
I grew up in Chicago, and then I went to college, and then I was in New York for about 10 years before moving here.
For any listeners thinking of moving to LA, what's your advice for them?
It takes time. I mean, I think this is probably the case for any new city, but maybe especially LA because it's so specific. You can't look for the same things as you got in other places in a new place. We've been asked a million times, how does New York compare to LA? What's better? What do you like more? And
It's apples to oranges.
it's apples to oranges. And I love both cities. It just really depends on what you're looking for in the moment. LA doesn't reveal itself to you in the way that New York does. You know, in New York, when you're looking for something, you can find it. In LA, people hang out in more private spaces. It just functions differently. But I think people are very nice and people are open to making new connections. I think that it's been a very welcoming, friendly place for us. Change is hard, especially if you're a social person and you're used to having a big community. It takes time to build community and to be patient.
There's not a lot of spontaneity here.
No.
In the same way that makes like New York so wonderful, where you can just kind of go places, run into people, end up somewhere else. I really miss that part. And it's definitely isolating. You're in your car a lot. You know, we've been here 10 years now, which is wild to say. And I feel like I'm still very much figuring it out. But yeah, I'd say be prepared to spend a lot of time in your car and be prepared to make and keep a lot of plans.
You opened Kismet in 2017. Sara Kramer, why did you want your own restaurant?
I have always had a desire to express my perspective and, you know, for better or worse, I feel like I've always dove headfirst into things. You know, maybe someday I'll work for someone again, but I don't think I could have ever worked for people without having had my own experience of working for myself and knowing what it really means. I think that I need to like get to the very edge of something, the very bottom of something, and want to understand it really fully. And I think that it's mostly that drive that pushed me to want to open my own restaurant, that I like wanted to see the entire project. And I don't think you get to do that if you aren't the owner and have the insight into all of the decision making, all of the choices. And I think only from that perspective can I decide then that I don't need that in another future project potentially.
Sara, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I relate to a lot of those sentiments. I think I've always been entrepreneurial in spirit and always wanted to do something for myself and new and have control. A lot of the reasons why does anyone want a restaurant? They want the control. They want to be able to create a vibe. They want to be the creative voice behind something and see how it's received.
How were you ready mentally, physically, financially? Can you take us back to that time? Or were you?
I mean,
Did
I
you
don't
were
think
you
we
not
were- I
ready?
think we were not.
Certainly not.
I mean, I think that we're both very hardworking. I will work myself into the ground.
That is our saving grace, that we're both incredibly hardworking and tenacious, and that we will always find a way to figure it out. Or maybe not always, but we
won't give
until
up.
this point. We really don't give up. And we are just very dedicated to a certain standard as well. And I think if we're not going to achieve that standard. We're going to work as hard as we can to get as close to it as possible. I think at the expense of other things in our lives, which, is very classic for chefs and workaholic people.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this idea that the restaurant industry has really changed culturally. And I think there are ways it has, especially for people that are employees of a business, of a restaurant. But I think that to be the owner of a restaurant still takes everything. And I cannot say that enough. So in terms of advice for people that are starting out, making a big change, starting out on their own, opening a traditional restaurant, you have to understand that you are always on and it will always take more from you than you expect.
But yeah, at the time, I think we underestimated all of that. And I think that's kind of an important perspective to a degree to get into it in the first place. I think had I known everything I know now, I might not have done it at that time. So I think that's kind of like the beauty of naivete.
I remember the first day I walked into a kitchen, which was this place called Applewood in Park Slope that doesn't exist anymore, but I owe a lot to that restaurant and the chef there. But I remember the first day I walked in and he was like, "Get out." Like, he was joking, but he was like, "You don't want this life."
I remember coming to the first Jubilee and we were on a break. I think there were some snacks, maybe some really lovely little baked goods. And Anita Lowe was there and she had, I think, a cane and had hurt her knee or was getting knee surgery or something along those lines. I'm sorry, I don't remember the details, but she was injured in some way. And I was like, "Oh, what happened?" And I'm like a 27-year-old person who's like, worked in kitchens for 6-7 years and still pretty like fresh on it, even though I'm like, I've worked really hard up until this point, but compared to Anita Lowe, certainly not. And I was like, "Yeah, what happened?" She was like, "This industry, restaurants." It was really a moment that I will never forget and important to think back on and something that, I mean, it definitely landed, but I don't think I fully appreciated just what she was saying.
The scene has evolved so much. I mean, I've been coming out here now for maybe 20 years, and it's so shocking to just think about how the dining scene has changed. Who are your mentors out here?
We absolutely love Mary Sue Milliken and Susan Feniger, who have been extremely helpful to us, especially when we first arrived.
Yeah, they just, unbelievably welcoming and supportive. And
yeah, I would say that I got a lot of very sound business advice from Erin Patinkin. Have really always appreciated her perspective and really appreciate her as a friend as well. And same thing with Mary Sue and Susan, just absolutely adore them.
yeah, there's a old guard world of female chefs in LA that have been very kind to us.
Yeah.
That also includes
Suzanne
Goen, and even like Nancy Silverton. There's a world of 20 years older than us.
Do you reach out enough to them?
Mary Sue and Susan,
a bit more.
Those two blow my mind. I mean, I know nobody has it all figured out in life, but spend 5 minutes with them and they are the closest, I think, to having things figured out.
They have some special sauce.
They have a vibe.
Yeah.
They have
just really
a
incredible. Vigor is a great word. I was going to say energy. I don't know. I think they're the kinds of people that everybody wants to be around. And that really goes a long way.
Absolutely. I just interviewed them for our Las Vegas miniseries. And my first question was, how have you maintained this professional partnership? Because they have been professional partners for 40 plus years.
Incredible.
So wild.
And therapy was one of the answers.
Yeah. I think it's that dedication to the partnership and to each other as people. I think it's really important. I think that, we talk about this a lot. I think that two perspectives are better than one. We often like to, include our staff in lots of conversations. I think that it really is helpful to have more than just you. I think anybody who is the head of a company or the head of any enterprise knows that they don't operate in a vacuum or in a bubble. So I think with the two of them, they are a great example of how partnership in the long term really is a beautiful thing and can pay off. And yet it's something you really need to work at.
Kismet has become shorthand for this veg-forward, seasonal eating, natural wine drinking way of life, and you have a devoted fan base for it. Was Kismet like this right out of the gate? How did you evolve?
Kinda, yeah.
I think it's always kind of been what it is.
Yeah. And I think it's also where, like the style of food, influences aside, even lots of dishes, lots of vegetables, fresh, is just who we are. That's what it's always been.
Tell me some staples of the menu.
We have a little gem salad that I think is a really good representation. It's always on the menu. It's been on the menu almost since we opened. And it's just very fresh, very tasty. But people honestly comment on it all the time. It's my dad's favorite dish at the restaurant, which is really cute.
It's both of our top three
so
at least.
Good. And it's like you don't necessarily feel that way about a salad, you know.
We use really good vinegar.
Really good vinegar from Katz, which
it's the honey.
Go out of your
vinegar.
way and get this vinegar. It's so good.
It adds like a nice little sweetness to it. And then we use dried grape leaves, which is salty, but also a little tangy, a little umami-y.
Like briny. They have a very distinct flavor. So it's like your standard variety, like dolma wrapper. And we dehydrate those and powder them, and that goes into the vinaigrette. So we've got like this flavor coating the salad, and then it's got toasted pistachios, and
which is really important because then I think that the vinaigrette can be too assertive without the richness from the pistachios.
Yeah, in the spring season, we have sugar snap peas like we have on it now.
Which, let's be real, is most of the year in California.
Yeah, it's always spring in LA.
When it's not spring, we use fennel.
Yeah, it's just a classic. I don't think it's a very loud thing, and people don't like talk about it all the time in a grandiose way. People are just like, oh, that's...
But everyone gets it.
Yeah, everyone gets it.
This is the land of the salad. I mean, you just have to be honest. We don't do salads in New York
No.
the way you do them here.
I have recently been going back to New York. You know, I go back a lot. My family's still there, and Sarah's family is there now too. Yeah. In the past few trips, I have noticed that I have a really difficult time eating. As much as I love the restaurants in New York, if I don't want something that's like pretty rich and pretty heavy with meat or seafood, like it is hard to get vegetables. It's great if you want some raw bar, or if you want to go to Servos and get like the chicken with fries. It's so delicious, but I would really like anywhere to go for a nice plate of vegetables.
Have you been to Chouquette?
No.
Oh, you two have to go to
I
Chouquette.
guess we gotta go there.
Well, let me know when you're in town next, and I'll
Great.
make a call or
Can't wait.
something. Also, the cucumber and cherries. Had that last night. That's a classic.
That is my favorite version of it, with cherries. That salad's always on the menu. It has
But the fruit changes.
The fruit changes.
Which is my favorite version.
Personally,
I mean, I love cherries. They're like
melon.
the top fruit for me, but maybe the melon.
You love
It's
melon.
I do love melon.
I think that's a surprising
hard to
combination for
know.
people, cherries and cucumbers.
We put a lot of fruit in our savory food, which is one of the things that my father always claimed he didn't like, but I think that he's wrong about his own like of it. But yeah, we put a lot of fruit in savory food because I do think that sweet balancing salty is important, and fruit is just also lends some acidity and some other freshness.
Beautiful fruit here, and like we can't possibly use it all up just on dessert. We don't have that many desserts. And I think on the whole, you know, not every single table is getting dessert. So we want to celebrate these beautiful things in the moment. And there is more seasonality to the fruit here than there is to the vegetables, because a lot of things grow on trees, and those really are once or twice annually. The stone fruit and the cherries are stone fruit, and the mulberries and things that are
apricots.
Like apricots. I think that we want to really celebrate those things when they're available. And right now you're hitting peak stone fruit season and like really good early summer stuff. So you've come at a nice time.
Let's talk about this cookbook. Kismet, bright, fresh, vegetable-loving favorites. You write that this is not a restaurant cookbook. What is
Correct.
We really wanted to make a cookbook that appealed to a wide range of folks and
specifically
the home cooks. Yeah. So there's a lot of recipes that you'll recognize if you've been to our restaurants, but they are all adjusted, made a little bit simpler for the home cook when needed.
Yeah, I think that we really, really wanted it to be a useful book. I think a lot of restaurant books are extremely beautiful, but not necessarily easy to cook from. And we wanted ours to be beautiful and also easy to cook from for the most part. And there are a couple of things in there that are going to be a little bit more challenging because some things you just can't simplify enough. But for the most part, I'd say 90% of the book is really approachable. And that was really important to us.
And I think it's also a good representation of our food. So we did make some adjustments, but you won't notice that much. Maybe, you'll still want to come to the restaurant for things to be just a little little bit better.
Yeah, people have been like,
little
why
extra
should I
special.
continue coming to Kismet now that I can make your food? I'm like, well, it's not going to be as good.
But it was fun flipping through the book because first off, the beginning of the book is great.
We labored over the beginning of this book, but very intentionally.
It's so much fun.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you.
So much personality. I learned a
Yeah.
lot about the two of you.
Thanks.
How long did you work on the book?
I think in earnest, like a year and a half.
That's what I've been saying.
But we got the book deal in 2019 and put it off. Probably worked on it in 2022 to 2023. Probably finished it fall 2023.
Let's walk through some recipes.
Yeah.
Which recipe is the best gateway to the world of Kismet?
I mean, the cucumber cherry salad's a really good, easy one. I think that's a very easy, great gateway. I think the broccoli salad also is a good gateway.
I also think even the chicken pies.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Really?
Yeah.
A little more
It's
challenging.
a little bit more challenging, but really rewarding, really delicious. And you can pack them away in your freezer and be reminded of the cookbook all the time.
Oh, I think another one that's on the cover, too, is the carrots that I think is a really good gateway because it's really easy.
What's the most personal recipe for each of you?
I think for me, it's the burekas. It's a family recipe. And even though I'm sadly gluten-free now and I can't even eat them, they are really fun for me to make and smell.
How about you?
I love the one that's labeled Jewish chicken, which is kind of a Eastern European sweet and sour.
You love flour water.
Oh, yeah.
How do you use it?
We use it in a lot of savory contexts. And I think that a lot of people say they don't like rose water or orange blossom water because I think it's often used in a very strong way, like a little too much. And so we really try to think about it as an accent, something that lingers when you're finishing a bite. So it's in the rosewater labna. And where's another good?
In the radicchio salad with fennel, roasted fennel.
Yeah, some orange blossom water there.
You got to go back to the fennel roasted fennel because I flagged that. What makes something fennel roasted fennel?
It's roasted in fennel seed.
Yeah, it's a bunch of toasted fennel seed that we toss fennel and roast it for some really nice caramelization. It's doubling down on the fennel. It's extra, extra tasty.
I love fennel so much, so
Same.
that immediately caught my eye. I will be trying that one. The only way to bake salmon.
Slow and low. It doesn't take very long even at a lower temperature, and it's much more supple. You don't risk dry salmon, which we hate.
Dry salmon is very
Except
sad.
for some people in my family who really prefer it.
I've had a lot of dry salmon.
Yeah.
Okay, before the speed round, a word I never think I'm pronouncing right. Zug?
I would say slug.
And tell us what it is.
There's a bunch of variations, but it's going to be like a spicy condiment or maybe a spicy herby condiment. One version is more of a paste. Another version is more of like a sort of spicy salsa verde. It's delicious, yeah. Like anything that's got a lot of
Garlic and
garlic
spice.
and spice and, not just like fire spice, but like spices. Really tasty.
We're big condiment people.
We love a sauce.
All right, we're going to do a little speed round.
Okay.
Sara Kramer, Sara Hymanson. Morning beverage.
Green tea.
Herbal tea, and if I'm being bad, green tea.
What's always in your fridge?
Yogurt.
Spicy condiments.
Favorite childhood snack?
I guess the burekas from the book.
It wasn't really a snacking household, so I'm going to actually say that what I wanted all the time was candy.
Treasured cookbook.
I think that the most useful cookbooks to me have been baking books because I think I need recipes for that a bit more. So anything Liz Pruitt's written, really love those, and her new Substack.
I have a huge cookbook collection. I really couldn't decide, but I guess as a kid, when I was first learning how to cook, I loved the joy of cooking because it was just like a Bible for anything I could imagine wanting to cook when I was a little kid.
Favorite food film?
Maybe not one specific film, but I really like the way food is depicted in the Studio Ghibli movies. They're so good.
So beautiful. I just don't think there's a better real food film than Tampopo.
Favorite smell?
It's hard to beat the smell of orange blossom. It's really just so dynamic. I maybe prefer the smell of like a really ripe peach or nectarine.
I'm going to say raw rhubarb.
Wow.
Do you know this
Oh,
smell?
yeah.
Yes,
I know the
it's very
smell.
fresh and
It's
green.
very fresh and green. And
Do you have to slice into it to
you just slice
experience
into
that?
it. And like Myers makes a soap that's rhubarb.
We all need to go get some raw rhubarb. Okay, last question. If you had to be trapped on a desert island with one food celebrity, who would it be and why?
when I think about trapped on a desert island, I'm like, okay, these are dire circumstances and we need to survive. And maybe that's not how everybody interprets this question, and more like you're stuck with someone you like. But I don't know, I feel like Annalise Gregory, who does like all of the foraging in Tasmania, I'm just like,
Okay.
she'd probably be a really useful person.
Some people think they'll be rescued right away, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
a
I'm
little
like,
insight.
I need to survive. And
So
with a person who knows how to forage.
I have an answer in a similar vein. Have you seen these Chinese YouTubers like Lisa Chi? They're like wildly popular, like many millions of subscribers, and they are part of this like back to the land traditional life food bloggers, and they make everything from scratch and like grow things and forage and make their own stoves and cooking utensils, and they make everything and
Okay,
use everything. So
I am going to check them out.
You should look. But yeah, I'll take one of them.
Okay, fascinating answer. Great.
We're very practical here. We're trying to survive.
Anyway, thank you both so much. It's really been an honor knowing you for as long as I have. And I think back to Mad Capra and just, all the phases of your career. And I feel very privileged to have experienced your food and your friendship over the years. So thank you so much.
Oh, we feel
Thank
the
you
same
so
way and
much.
really appreciate that.
That's it for today's show. I would love for you to subscribe to Radio Cherry Bomb on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a rating and a review. Let me know what you think about the show and your ideas for future guests. Our theme song is by the band Tra La La. Special thanks to Outpost Studios in San Francisco and Third Wheel Podcast Studio in Los Angeles. Our producers are Catherine Baker and Elizabeth Vogt. Our associate producer is Jenna Sadhu, and our content and partnerships manager is Londyn Crenshaw. Thanks for listening, everybody. You're the bomb.